Hello, and welcome to Royale Without Cheese, our bi weekly podcast in which we discuss both the classic and the unknown of Hollywood and foreign cinema from the then and now. We are your hosts, me, Miguel Aido, Tomás Ferreira,
Hello, hello.
hi Tomás, and Leonardo Miranda.
Hey there, happy to be here as usual.
Great. Three filmmakers in an informal dialogue with a film review each episode. As part of our movie-infused shindig, reviews in both English and Portuguese will be available for different listeners. Today's episode will be in English, and we'll be having a go at Hong Sang-soo's The Woman Who Ran. Portuguese speakers can head to the Portuguese labeled content section. Now, sit back and hope you enjoy.
Maybe the fanboy, Miguel, wants to have a go at his Sang-soo.
Sure. Yeah, I'm a fan of his. Although I think there's that. It wasn't my favorite film of his, although it's very interesting. I mean, they're always interesting. Although I rewatched Right Now Wrong Then few last week or something, and that's such a great film. I keep comparing his work to that film because, well, it's my favorite. So, this one has really interesting ideas. I think it starts kind of so casually with those animal conversations about the cow and then the cat. It's like, is this film gonna be about vegetarianism or something? But then it completely goes in another direction. But yeah, I think it starts kind of interestingly because it's so trivial about a specific issue that Hong Sang-soo was thinking about, because that's what he does. He has ideas and he wants to comment on them and sort of relate them to the audience, and then he just makes up conversations between characters and they talk about these ideas. And I really became aware of of him making this in this film. I don't know if you guys thought about it as well.
Well, you know what? I have seen recently, because we were coming up with this film. I have seen Wrong Now,
Right now.
then, or right now, right now, Wrong Then, and recently, and before that, I saw The Day He Arrives. I didn't like The Day He Arrives that much.
okay.
It's okay. It's like
Yeah.
I wasn't.
No,
My
it's
least
cool.
favorite as well.
And before that, I saw Taste of Cinema, and of course, I saw
Tail
Alone at the Beach at Night. I think
on the beach
Yeah.
at night
on
alone.
the beach at night alone. Okay, I'm always
Yeah, I
mixing
watched
up.
that one too.
Stop writing commas, man. Stop writing commas. Do make full sentences. But Right Now Wrong Then I liked best, in comparison to The Day He Rise. And then I liked The Woman Who Ran even more, because I thought that he was presenting. I disagree.
I think
But,
right now, Wrong Done is probably it's my favorite of his that I've watched. Although he has so many, I'm still catching up. But yeah, of all I watched,
Oki's film is also very, very strong, very good film.
there's so many. I thought The Woman Who Ran was his most recent film, but he's released two since then. Introduction.
Oh, yeah. I
and the
mean, it was in
Novelist film.
2020, so.
Yeah, I thought it was the most recent one.
But I did like
it's very prolific.
Wrong Now, Wrong Then. Very much. I
Right
think he
Now,
does
Wrong
things in
Then?
the- Right, God damn it. Wrong Now? No, right now. Jesus Christ.
Right now.
I think I prefer to begin with wrong. But right now, I think it has different things in that film that surely are just make it a totally different film. And in that respect, at times more interesting, I think. Because in the matter of mise en scène, let's start by that, because I took a lot of points in terms of mise en scène that go across his films in general, and just by seeing this film, I think what makes him so interesting to me is that, well, for starters, just like a principle. Let's start with the phrase of Alfred Hitchcock, which is, life, well, film is life with dull bits cut out. And in that mainstream orchestration of film, basically we're directing a person's perception, introspection, and the gaze to the film with all the cuts to the close-ups and all. And with Hong Sang-soo is different, and also with Godard is different, now that we are trying to connect both, because he much more privileges the wide shot. I think it's his main friend in orchestration of his films, and how he composes people talking and what is the human landscape of everyday life. He really relies a lot on the wide shot, and with that the dilation of time, the dilation of the wide shot, so much so that we lose track of time and we get lost in these conversations. And what he begs from then on is that you make your own mental cuts, your own montage of the behaviors. And at bottom line, what he's saying is that there are so many gestures that are lost in our daily lives, in our conversations, so many gestures that become unnoticed by us, in our friends, so many things that we are not understanding within this wide shot. Because he can even have, and he has this, which is different. It doesn't happen. Well, it does happen on this film, but I think on Right Now, Wrong Then. Yes, I said it right. Yeah. It happens in particular, which is he has by relying on the wide shot and on this question of losing gestures, and by this, I think one of his ideas is that you ultimately lose you lose pieces of people's inner selves within these wide shots, because you are always losing gestures in our interaction. People, you access to them, but at the same time, there's little things that you miss. And I find that idea very beautiful about what is to have a conversation with somebody else. And Right Now, Wrong Then, yes, you have a situation where within the wide shot, you have this dinner scene with the director, his friend, and other two friends. So essentially have 5 people in a scene. And what happens is that there is a moment when his girlfriend, I don't remember her name, realizes something about him, because he's questioned about something that by one of her friends, something about he said about her, that she was going through her own path in her art and everything. And so it seemed like a very genuine, very encouraging, motivating response, until the friend questions him about it, and that she heard him say that about his own work in a masterclass. And you see in her face within this wide shot, like a transformation. And he does not zoom in, because sometimes the zoom helps out in that sense. It functions like the cut to close up or the cut to medium shot. While here, what is so challenging to a normal viewer is to make that cut and to actually notice that you need to make the jump between the conversation between these two people, the friend and the director, to actually see the emotions on the girlfriend, who is on the opposite side of the table, and to really notice that, oh, there's something going on with her that I'm not seeing. And this is happening all the time, I think, generally in Hong Sang-soo, where two people on a table of 5 may be having a conversation, and that's the main focus, but then some others are having a look, are exchanging looks or exchanging gestures, and that's so rich and so interesting. I think there's a real hard comment there about how every day you lose something in terms of this dynamic between people. And he says it becomes all the more challenging, you see, when you have 5 people in a conversation. I think that's what he's saying.
Yeah, I think that's all very, very, very true. I found myself thinking that, these films are so about cinema itself, also in that way that you're constantly thinking about film form. Why does he do a close-up at a specific time through a zoom rather than keeping the wide shot? Why does he not go to the zoom when a character clearly is expressing herself more, and so you have to do it for yourself? So it's one of those directors whose films you're constantly reflecting on, on the form, on why these things are happening or not happening, and then reflecting on them. And yeah, and what I wanted to say that I mentioned with Alphaville, that comment about close-ups, is that, yeah, sure, you make a lot of cuts yourself, but the zoom is such non-used, so non-used in pretty much cinema in general, that a director that uses it all the time really makes a shift. And you see his films, and every time a zoom happens, you're kind of jolted.
I also think that it's sort of deceptive in the sense that on a surface level, when my idea of a Hong Sang-soo film, it's like, oh, it's a one like it's a single shot of two people talking, usually front to front, for a long time or whatever. And it seems like, oh, that's pretty simple. It's not. He's sort of hiding the artifice. But then you watch and you're even more conscious of everything, of the camera itself, because instead of cutting, right, when a character says something important, you usually cut closer to them and you don't even notice. You're just watching the film as it's being made. But here you literally see the camera move, the zoom in. So you're like, oh, but why are you zooming in? So you are becoming conscious of of how different sizes and the different size of the image communicates different things. And I think that's something that a lot of people, especially people who aren't part of the filmmaking itself, who aren't filmmakers or whatever, maybe don't notice that as much. Whereas with the Hong Sang-soo film, you're forced to think about that stuff because he's showing you, like, here is where I would do a close-up, but I'm not going to cut to it. I'm going to zoom in. So do you think about that? And then it does the opposite thing where Tomasz was talking about, where, so why aren't you zooming in now? Like, this seems like an important information, but I'm noticing it because I would be thinking of the zoom. I think that's very interesting. I think it's
like he builds his own language, but then subverts it, and he keeps the wide. And I love it because that situation in
Right Now, Wrong Then.
Yes, it's perfect because I love that you did not make the zoom and that I did notice this little plot point, let's say. Very interesting. And then on the nature of zoom, to me, it's what I call it. I'm gonna, put this term on the essay box right now. I'm gonna punch it. Here it comes. I call it places of intimacy that create frames of thought. I have a new microphone, everybody, so get your belts ready. So, I think with the zoom, he just, it's like this. As you were saying, in mainstream film, you essentially have the cuts, and in the beginning of film history, it's almost like they are realizing that human perception really complements this way of seeing, because you're constantly making cuts to people, mental cuts to different situations, different moments, gestures. Sometimes you're looking at the person, you're looking at the mouth, the nose, the eyes. You're talking, and you are noticing details. With Hong Sang-soo, the logic is the same, because here is a situation, two people talking, wide shot, and then becomes medium shot, and then becomes close up, and it is the cut to. But I think the zoom has this operatic thing. The meaning of it is almost saying that this mechanism that we are doing, that the zoom is making, is human as well, is part of the conversation. And once he does that, he creates different places of intimacy. If you notice, or at least as I feel it, the zoom acts as it goes deeper in this human landscape, which is two people talking. You create different degrees of reality, degrees of socializing, degrees of thought, I think. And suddenly somebody speaks out of frame. So there comes in this relationship with the off-screen, where either somebody speaks out of frame and the characters turn to that person or that situation, and then themselves start talking to that situation, which is out of frame. And the camera zooms out and includes that character. This happens in particularly The Day He Arrives, constantly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's very interesting because this either happens, or you have characters suddenly referring themselves to something they see off screen and you don't see that thing. Also in this film, it happens because, for example, you have two characters looking at, which is even more, deeper, even more deeper, which is like you have these two characters, these two friends in the living room looking at something, and the camera has never shown this corner of the living room. It's also always stays in this corner. In the previous scene, it has showed everything, like the dialogue from this corner. We come back to this corner, and they are talking and referencing something that is off screen, and that is actually an action that happens outside the building, which is a neighbor. They are talking about a neighbor that goes outside to smoke because of her abusive parent and father, and they're like, but there's not a window there. From where are they looking at this action? And then I'm reminding myself, oh wait, she mentioned a CCTV camera at the beginning of the film, so maybe it's that. But you see this conscious decision of him not mentioning the camera, which is interesting. And they're having that said, I think it heightens the perception that they're looking at the void in the context of the scene. So it makes you feel like they are talking about someone who could very well be themselves, I think, because the film, and this answering the thematics of the film really overall talks about, to me, the oppression of men over women. I think that the little control that there is in men inadequacy for love relationships is a thing that happens frequently in Hong Sang-soo. But particularly in this film, I feel that it comes across with a new thing, which is how you have little your independence in a relationship, particularly for women, given that women are the protagonists in this film. But I think it could be for anyone, men or women. Your independence in a relationship becomes constrained. If you go on a holiday and if a friend asks you out on a holiday, you need to bring up your better half. It seems like the things you do alone are limited, which is strange. You should be independent, but at the same time, because of a question of politeness and because it is what it is, you need to bring the other half. And I started thinking about those things, and poor her, the protagonist, is like in this relationship where the husband in particular just thinks that love is about sticking together, and she cannot do anything alone. I think in the context of the film, he's a lot more, let's say, dictatorial about it, I guess, to someone who says that to his better half. But overall, in relationships, you always have to consider your better half and bringing her or him to the situations. What do you think of this kind of thoughts? I don't know if you felt the same. If you find this new.
I felt theme-wise, I felt more like it was about these doubts of this woman about whether she truly feels happy or not. Because you sense with these three friends she talks to, and the mentioning of the 5 years that we're always together, that she's sort of assessing through her friends what she actually thinks about it. And it's interesting because it becomes sort of a game, how she frames the question and then how the person answers it. And but yeah, for me it was more about this I mean, am I happy? Do I keep this going, or is this okay? I mean, every couple goes through this, so can we am I perhaps even blessed in a sense to have such a committed partner? So I think all of these things are going through her head. And for me, thematically, that was more what I thought. But I mean, if I can just add something about the zoom and the close up, just because I remembered. I mean, I think it's quite almost paradoxical in a sense, because I mean, the more traditional way of telling of cutting is through an actual cut and a close up, which is a traditional way of doing, but it's also artificial because in real life you don't really cut and see things from a different angle with a different background.
Yeah.
Whereas Hong Sang-soo does a zoom, which seems more appropriate in connection to real life, where the background sort of remains the same, but you focus your eyes and your gaze on something specific. But even though that's more realistic, it's the one thing that he does that jolts you more to the artifice of what's happening. So it's interesting because it's a bit paradoxical in that sense.
Yeah, because it's
yeah.
yeah, exactly. In theory, is as I was saying, it should be more deceptive in the sense that it should feel more like you're watching just a scene happen and not being made. But at the same, but you notice because it's so mechanic, it's like that someone is zooming in and showing you something, whereas in, I guess the difference is that here the camera has as much more presence because it's operated. You see, it's operated in the sense that there's the physical optical zoom, whereas in a more traditional sense, the camera is supposed to be a non-entity. You cut, but you're not thinking of oh, they had to place the camera there to show, then they had to place the camera there to show the other thing. It's just you're watching something. Yeah, I don't know. I can't explain the psychology of why we interact that way with cinema. It's also because it became the norm, so we don't become aware of it. I mean, that's something that Godard was doing, is also having these breaks of sound, these these cuts, very abrasive cuts, also showing attention to the form itself, to the act of making cinema, whereas traditional Hollywood is about hiding the cut, hiding the the artifice, even if it's very artificial.
And I think in respect to this new idea of the off-screen with the the zoom, I think that the dilation of time and the zoom creates this kind of situation where you are immersed. There is this characteristic, very tangible characteristic about his films, where you are immersed by the conversations, and the deeper you go, as the zoom escalates the shot, the more attentive you are to the conversations, I think, and the more involved you are with the emotions. And once something off screen happens, you realize the artifice of it. You realize the zoom. I think sometimes I don't realize the zoom. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Sometimes the zoom is something that completely enthralls me, and I'm within it. I'm within the language. I'm within the conversation. And once the off-screen aspects happen, these invisible agents that come in that we don't see and start interacting with the characters in the field of view, then it's when I realize the artifice. Oh, I was attracted. He made this happen. And I think that's really him praising what is so lovely about crushes and friendships and human relationships. You get lost into conversations. Yeah. And then and he's in the question of dialogue, I think he really tries to make dialogue along with the visuals a very attractive thing, because it's so completely natural and mundane, and he goes, much like his visuals, they come like waves. He comes in and out of explicit and implicit themes, and going in and out of what is really the meat of the thought and inner feelings of the people on screen. And even if he's mentioning something that seems completely off, completely distant, completely nothing to do with what is the inner themes of the film, it actually has something to do metaphorically or out there. For example, when you have Young Sun, the friend of Gam-hee, which is the protagonist of the film, mentioning, for example, the relationship between intellect and body, there's something to do about how we in our relationships sometimes are very mechanic and want to stay in our little places and little lives and just leave them out in a kind of routine. And sometimes we need to leave the intellect and follow our instincts, our needs, our body. And then right ahead, they mentioned all that relationship with the animals and the rooster that picks out chickens, chickens like entering in Van Azok, like chickens, like hens' backs. It has something to do with like male vanity or male aggression. Just and then you have, of course, there's many different degrees. You have, because you have relationships as being love relationships, men and women interfering with each other, but then you have the simplicity of a neighbor coming in, knocking at their door and complaining about the cat. And they are so sweet, like, oh, really? Oh,
it's so passive aggressive.
We don't want to do that. So passive aggressive.
Yeah. But yeah, the film follows that structure always of a man interrupting the woman and coming in with some fucking bullshit most of the times. You have the poet or whatever.
Yes.
You have that guy. And then you have the last one, which is not an interruption. It's a different dynamic. She comes to it, or she passes by him. He's also, but yeah, the men are they're mostly non-entities in the sense they're this outside figure that are enacting some form of oppression or discomfort in the women.
Yeah.
And I guess I don't know. I guess they should run from them. But I do think that,
interestingly enough,
yeah,
I've read sorry, what were we going to say?
No. I was gonna say that the title is very suggestive and interesting. I don't know what you guys think of it.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic because she runs from her man to then, I don't know. I mean, is she unhappy in her relationship? I think it's an interesting debate because she's confronting that with other friends, which is true, and you can say
she's feeling it out. I think.
Yeah,
I think she's feeling it out.
On the second time I watched it, because I rewatched it yesterday just to have it more in mind, I was much more like, oh, this is a woman who has left her husband. Like she's gone from him, and now she's meeting with people who have also like set themselves free of some kind of relationship with men, and she's trying to see how their lives are now. Especially the second one was like she's living in this apartment, she's having casual sex with guys, and she's living, even though she's not a young person, but she's having a more casual life. And I feel like she's sort of feeling the terrain. She's trying to see if this is something that I want for myself.
Yeah.
And you see that in the, like, she keeps repeating that line of oh, how my husband always says we should stick together, whatever. And she says it in a way that's clearly rehearsed, but I only noticed that on the second watch, really, that it seems like a prepared speech. And especially because the girl on the third story, she says that she's talking about her husband going on TV and repeating the same things, and she's like, how can it be truthful when you're repeating from memory? It's not.
That's such a Hong Sang-soo thing. Like, clearly he's talking about himself.
Yeah. And yeah, exactly. But then immediately after she says that, the Kim Hee, Gam Hee, the actor, she says the line. She says the thing of, oh yeah, my husband, we're staying away. So it's like, clearly, it's the comedy of Hong Sang-soo. It's such a, yeah. Immediately after someone comments on how repetition is fake and untruthful, immediately the character does that.
Yeah.
It's comic, and it's also like, oh, it gives a different dimension to the character, because now you start thinking, oh, so she might not be truthful in what she's saying, in the sense that she's not happy with those parameters that the husband set. Maybe she does need to, they need to spend time apart.
Ultimately, I think the filmmaker who appears at the end, you mentioned the last friend talking about her husband in such a way, in how he appears on TV. That husband was her ex-boyfriend at one time. So I think the final moments, it's like she's confronting the male figure in a way, or what she wants to say to, or what she would like to say to her boyfriend. I think it's a form of taking control, I think, the situation. In other films, I am slightly annoyed because I think in other films where he's always talking about, this was refreshing in a way for me, because finally he's not putting the male filmmaker at the center of the thing, and I'm seeing a story, with different characters, with women.
But he's done that many times, actually. With Grass, and
Alone in the Beach at Night, for example. Yeah.
Oki's film is also very based on
he always comes back essentially to artists, poets, and filmmakers. That is true. But I think coming off of...
That's the thing that speaks... Sorry. That's the thing that speaks to the whole repetition dialogue, where... I mean, I looked at that scene, and for me, it was clear that it wasn't just a character repeating. It's like Hong Sang-soo and his themes repeating themselves.
Oh yeah, sure.
And these elements, because I mean, here I thought this film wouldn't present any film director, and then at the very end, there's this film director presenting a film.
Yeah, definitely.
Classic.
But still, I felt it was, even if presenting one, I felt the film was very fresh in a way that, I mean, particularly in this week, coming off of The Day He Arrives and
Right Now, Wrong Then.
Coming out of those films where there's always the protagonist as, I feel like it's basically him, So here it was. I felt it
is a film that is much more straightforward and
that is true.
There's not sort of structure gimmicks like Right Now, Wrong Then, and
yeah, but it's
or
more
Grass,
from,
where he switches between characters and perspectives. I think it's okay. Let's focus on one character.
I think but I'm speaking particularly of the fact that the protagonist is always the filmmaker, the male filmmaker, and he always is conniving in his relationships. It leaves me a little bit uncomfortable. I mean, I love the films and I love his style, but I think particularly because of his particular history, marital history, of betrayal and everything, which is all a theme that personally is separating the person from his art, is something that kind of messes with me.
I mean, I get he's just very honest, I guess, but I also think he's conscious that there's artifice to it. Like it's not just autobiography,
he never condemns his men. I think he's always. It's almost.
I don't know.
Sometimes
I
I
think
feel
he
like.
does. See,
Yeah, it does.
I mean, depends on Tale of Cinema. He does, for example, if you've seen.
Oh yeah,
that one.
yes.
Complete, and like that one already seems like he's commenting. Is already critiquing himself before he goes fully in on those tendencies that he has now. Like he's commenting on some. Yeah, the character has obsessed with. He sees himself in that film, and then he follows that woman, and he's very annoying. But yeah, but I do think, like in Right Now, Wrong Then, he's very critical of the guy.
Yeah, in that the characters of men are so, I mean, upfront and often have drinking problems. I mean, this is not trivial. I mean, it's clearly saying that if this might be honest about who he is as a person, Hong Sang-soo, but that's not a very flattering view of who he is, and perhaps of his view of men, of Korean men. So I mean, I think that in his description that he makes a characterization of these men in his stories, I think he's clearly making a stance about them.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, I was reading an article in the New Yorker. I was reading an article in the New Yorker. I was reading an article in the New Yorker.
Coffee.
Morning coffee, and I was reading about well, this
You have the
film.
daily subscription.
Daily subscription. Yes, Reginald. Good day, sir, Mr. Bottomtooth. Good day. And a little detour, but yeah, I was reading an article in the New Yorker about the film, and it did say, interestingly enough, in connection to Godard, that he was one of the most like French filmmakers, non-French filmmakers, in the way that he was political or could be political, because as I came to know, and this led me to another article, in South Korea there's a real greater tension between genders. There's like a gender war, almost, by what I read of the article, because I mean, both factions, feminists, and there's a reversal Me Too movement of little men, like young men who attack who have attacked the feminist group.
Also in the West, that's not just
in the West
Korean.
as well, exactly. But the things I've read, like quotations, I think they have used, they have taken like little like slangs, popular slangs, in reverse to attack the feminist groups, and some even. Statistics say that if they have a feminist girlfriend, they will break up with them. And one columnist even has wrote that this radical feminism is even worse than Islam. And I'm like, what the fuck? Let's break the pumps a bit, okay? That's ridiculous.
I don't think those guys will have girlfriends. So.
And there's a lot of by what I read as well. There's a lot of like work disparity and women not in leadership roles, which as well in the West happens. But yeah, it seems to be pretty abrasive over there.
Yeah, and Hong Sang-soo reflects on that as well, often, in terms of the work disparities and employment. Here as well, with that $1 million house, which I thought was like, this cost how much?
I think perhaps my annoyance was more with Today He Arrives. Maybe I didn't like that film so much, and the male figure in that film just made me.
Yeah, there I agree kind of with you.
I think because that was the first film of my week, it contaminated everything that came afterwards. I think he's always pressing himself against.
So.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, but so that character is really inappropriate in the way he interacts. Yeah, he just presses
himself against the waitress who doesn't really do
they're
anything.
Walking down. They're walking down the street, and he just kisses her out of nowhere. But the problem is that, like, the way Hong Sang-soo does it, like, she's okay with it. She's completely fine.
She's okay with it, and she wants more or something.
Yeah, which is a little like that could happen, but it's like it's a little strange and it happens twice, I think, so it's even stranger. But even structurally, that film I didn't really.
No, I didn't connect. And he's an asshole to his own fans too, so he gets drunk and flees away.
He runs away. Stop copying me.
Just decides a little. His brain just jolts and oh my god, I gotta flee. It just runs away.
Yeah, I haven't seen that film in a while, but I thought a bit better of it.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting.
Maybe, I don't know.
I do think it does interesting things about the repetition, but it's a little more confused for me.
Yeah, in terms of the repetition, I thought Right Now Wrong Then to be more interesting. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
in its
Yeah.
application.
Yeah.
I think what I thought mostly of Right Now Wrong Then was I thought how beautiful was the second half compared to the first half. That when people were honest with each other, even if it hurt, they became more in love with each other. I think that was very beautiful to see.
And at the same time, it's not like pure fantasy. He still does things wrong, all right? He still says the wrong things sometimes. He looks in her bag and she's like, why are you doing that?
Oh yeah, and it's even more silly. He becomes fully naked or something.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like I guess that's the more fantasy side. It's the more ideal, like what one would like it to be. I think, yeah, the repetition is. We were talking about gestures and all that, and Right Now Wrong Then is even more important in the sense because you really have the two halves to compare. It's not just the scene itself. It's the two when you put things side by side and you reflect upon it and you say, oh, so this went better here because in the other time he did it that way. So it's really, yeah, I think it's his most accomplished film, but I have to watch way more. He has so many.
Yeah, I agree. I think from these that we've talked about, yeah, The Day Arrives is the one I remember the least. I would really recommend Oki's film as well. But yeah, I mean, I think repetition is always consistent with him, and in this film, it's through this, as we said, this bit of exchange with the whole 5 years, never apart thing.
I think the structure itself, even though it's
Of course.
it's a linear film in the sense that
It's three interactions and
three interactions over time, but each interaction has there's a similar structure to it. It starts with them talking, then there's the repetition of the 5 years, then a guy comes in and interrupts them, and there's a passive aggressive discussion somehow, and then they watch something over CCTV, or they watch or someone watches something over the video. Where in the last story is where he breaks the structure of the first two, maintains a bit, but instead of the guy coming to interrupt, it's her that passes through him, and instead of watching a CCTV video, she watches a movie.
yeah, that ending is quite nice because it's she comes back because as she said, she's relaxed. It's a calm film, so she can relax here and sort of escape her problems. I thought it was a very beautiful ending.
Throughout the film, there's that whole every woman interacts with nature in some sort of way. There's the mountains. It usually starts with like a shot of a mountain or of nature of some sort, like but through like to a grid or through a window or something like that, and then it ends like it's not through a window or through a grid. It's through you see the actual thing. So I think there's a general, again, the general idea of someone who's longing for something, for some sort of freedom, but there's a barrier between them. And I think the film is trying to comment on that.
The connections with the mountains, it's interesting how it cuts in those cases because it's like it cuts in the POV they're looking at a mountain and it's through the mountain that then you come back to another character would also be looking at it or imagining it or thinking about it. So the focus becomes what they're thinking about and what they idealize, and that's interesting because since they're all characters with troubles, I mean, they all want this sereneness in their lives, and that's the focus that he puts, that he has these mountains. Yeah. Yeah, it's much you're saying.
And it's interesting how throughout the film the way he progresses about revealing in a way through her friends, how her marriage is and how her position is. This is the main character, Kim Min-hee, because you have things like because she's always comparing, her state, her relationship state with her friends. You have her first friend, Young Soon, saying, "Oh, I could never live with another person the whole day, all day. It'd be oppressive." And then the other friend later on says, "Oh, but you don't have to support yourself." It's like, well, that's strange. What's that? And then she's bored with the flower shop, and she's kind of comparing herself to essentially to her artsy dancer performance friend, really. And what is she losing? So I do feel like, despite me saying earlier that I don't know if she's unhappy, that little by little he peels off the nature of herself questioning herself about her marriage.
Like the last episode again, like I think as I was rewatching, I was like, oh, because on the first time I watched, I thought it was just like she was there to watch a film or something like that, and it's just a coincidence that her ex-boyfriend was there and that the girlfriend of her ex-boyfriend is there. But on the rewatch, I thought, oh no, she probably was there to see him on purpose.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, here it's the performance. I think Kim Hee's like the relationship with Hong Sang-soo, like it really helps that they're so on in sync. Like a clear, she's really
Yeah,
giving.
she works with him all the time.
And
All the actors, really.
I don't know if she's married with him, but they are in a relationship.
Yeah, they had their own Rossellini Bergman scandal.
Yeah.
In 2017. But yeah, but her performance, she has such little details in the way she reacts to, because that's the film essentially, seeing how she reacts to what people say about themselves and about her, and her reaction is very, when the friend says, I think she asks him like, oh, so why are you here? Are you here to, I thought you'd be here to see him or something like that. She's like, seems like she's gonna say, oh no, I'm just I was just here to see a film. I thought, oh, okay, no, she was definitely here to see him, and then she meets him outside, like, oh, by chance. I think she really wanted to confront him.
Surprised to see her friend.
Yeah.
And what is so interesting is that after she confronts him, she goes back in to see the film. She sits down, and it's like, oh my god, I just had this kind of lashing out to.
Yeah. She
in a way, a little lash out,
and then comes back immediately.
And then comes back. It's kind of very beautiful that kind of happens. I don't know. It's almost like there's these difficulties. There are these difficulties with this past relationship, and she wants to let out what are essentially still the words of her other friend. You know, that this kind of repetition coming in, not from a lover but from a friend in her own way. She basically uses it as meat for canon to go at him, but yet again she kind of still appreciates him and goes back in and tries to reevaluate his film, kind of separating the art from the person. Maybe this is a commentary of Sang-soo on himself, don't know. And we just let ourselves getting into that final shot of this film. There's something meta about it. Also something meta about a character watching a shot of another character, in the sense of that those CCTV moments. It's like we are seeing these characters interact, like this friend of Kim Min-hee going at this fanboy in love poet, and yet we go back to this other character, Kim Min-hee, and she's watching a shot in scene of these people going out. There's something
like
he has this fascination.
Reverse shot.
Yeah, is that he has this fascination about throughout his films of questioning how the public contaminates the private. It's just always to come in circles, always coming in and out of each other, the private and the public.
That scene is interesting, especially because it reminded me of another thing I thought, because when she goes to the door and then she has the discussion with that sort of ex-boyfriend in the hallway, and you're just with them too for a long time. I mean, and you think about it, it's like every character at some point in a movie becomes a main character. You can't introduce a new character without giving them some time, some dialogue. Even at the end, when with the friend, the friend which is the director's girlfriend, and the other one, even those two speak for a while, and it's completely brand new characters, because they need to have something, I don't know, to have some substance, I suppose. But I mean, Hong Sang-soo can't introduce new characters just like that. They need to have time and some consideration and some dialogue, and yeah.
And considering it's such a short film, I feel like every character has such a detailed characterization, even if it's brief. I think it's very impressive.
Yeah.
And also that zoom in on the cat is perfect. Like
which one?
The zoom in on the cat. Tomás, estás mute.
On the cat, yeah.
Yeah, the cat is incredible. And he poses for the camera. Is really.
Yeah, there's something about animals. It's the rooster. It's the cat.
Yeah. Nature
the beginning is very nature driven. I was surprised.
Yeah.
And it was a very impressive shot, because as always, it's a very long shot, but the cat is always there and doesn't move, and then he zooms on him. So it's like, how many takes did
exactly.
that take?
I did wonder that, like, Was that like finally we
Like
got
I
the
wonder,
shot?
I wonder that every time. And how can he have essentially these very long shots, wide shots, and then zoom in, zoom out? You know, he doesn't cut. Sometimes I feel like, does he cut? Because I feel he cuts, but he doesn't. You know, it's just one position throughout the whole conversation in a scene. What essentially doing the cuts is the zoom. That's what gives you the feeling. And I'm always wondering, how many takes does he do? How well he must rehearse this to the T. I don't know. I would be surprised if he says, "Oh, it's all improv."
I think I saw his work method. It's something like he writes in the morning before the shoot. Like he
Oh yeah.
writes the what's gonna happen. I don't think he writes scripts, at least not in the traditional sense. Maybe he writes a script for funding and stuff like that. But then
Yeah.
in the morning he just
And I don't
whatever
think he
he's
has many
feeling.
funding. I don't think he has. I think I
Probably-
read in
I
an
think-
article he doesn't
yeah.
have them.
Because but also his films are like incredibly
Cheap.
cheap in
Yeah.
comparison to, you know, I think it's like 100K per film that he usually spends, which is, you know, it's a lot of money, but in the context of a big production, that's, you know, that's why he can make so many films probably.
I never had 100K. Give
Yeah,
me
no,
100K.
Yeah, give me 100K.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not very many shots, not many characters. So yeah,
It's that thing, you know, lack of money. You kind
work
of
with what you have.
the limitations spur creativity in a way, you know, just
Yeah, and he also
think
works with
it's,
a lot of actors who already are familiar with his method.
hmm
I think the director guy, I don't know, but the last guy,
the first friend is definitely.
yeah, in the guy who she confronts in the end. Also, I've seen him in a bunch of his films, and yeah, it's both Godard and Hong Sang-soo for me are very inspiring in that sense of
yeah.
working with what you have available, and yeah,
Yes.
making, you know, shaping your style, not just in a, you know, idealistic sense, but in the sense of what you have in front of yourself, what's available to you, the people you can work with, and yeah, they really have their own thing.
Yeah. And sometimes I wonder about the camera. Sometimes I wonder about the camera that he uses. I think he has, we use the Sony F55 or was it FS5? I don't know, but yeah, because he always has that kind of digital, you know, video quality, you know, which is very alluring. Where it's not cheap, that it looks bad, but you know, it's not high tech. You know, it's very beautiful.
What I respect is that he's not trying to pretend like it's film, like celluloid or whatever. Like you can tell that it's digital.
Yeah.
The zooms are very, you know, it's
But,
got a
you
digital
know,
quality to it, even if it's
looks
optical.
beautiful.
But it
Looks
looks great, yeah.
Looks very
Natural.
particular. It doesn't look. It looks mundane without looking. It's not by any means amateur. You know, it's
Yeah,
like
exactly.
it's not amateur video. He's not trying to get that approach in.
I think part of it is because it's so serene and truthful.
Yeah, it's
I
very
suppose.
serene.
Yeah.
Even the zooms, the pans. I think his pans are like, they're not very quick. They're not slow.
Yeah.
They're just the right amount. It's
Very
just
fluid.
very fluid.
Yeah. I love his style. I'm gonna watch more.
Yeah.
It's really one of those filmmakers that I feel like
So-
the more you watch, also the more you understand him. Probably.
There was a film that we saw. I think it was his. That was, I don't know if it was in black and white, but there was this whole huge park. It was filled with snow, and two characters met. There was a thing with the glove.
Oh yeah, we did
Trading.
the glove. We
Yeah,
watched
I
that.
don't remember, but I think it was that moment was so beautiful to me. I don't remember the fucking film, the name.
Was
Yeah.
it like an older man and a woman, young woman?
I'm not sure.
Maybe
Because there's a scene in Oki's film with
I think
on the snow.
is Oki's film in black and white?
No, and no. The Day He Arrives is on in
Yeah,
black
but
and white.
it's not that one.
Grass is also black and white, but Grass doesn't have snow, I think.
Yeah, maybe Hotel by the River. I don't know.
Did you saw all the Hong Sang-soo films in the Portuguese Cinematheque, Miguel?
No.
Or no?
It was at home. No.
I was under the impression that you caught some, cycle of those films, if you can call that a program.
Maybe, but I think I've ended up rewatching them at least.
Well, I really
home
loved
already.
watching watching him on the big screen when I was when we were there for Alone at Night. It was very beautiful.
Oh, you
Oh
watched
yeah,
that
yeah,
on
that film, yeah, I
Great.
think it was the only one, yeah.
Where did you watch it? Was it
We watched it.
Cinematheque?
Yeah.
Oh,
It was
nice.
I mean, because you're used to. I mean, your memory goes back to being in class and watching the films, you know.
Yeah.
But seeing it on the big screen,
Oh, yeah.
especially being a digital video, it just feels different. It's just it sucks you in, you know. Yeah.
It had the same protagonist, this Kim Min-hee or something.
Kim Min-hee, yeah.
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 Oh yeah,
Sorry
Alone.
again.
I really like that one on the beach at night, alone.
Yeah, it's good. It has such a capacity to voyage to different places, you know.
Yeah, he starts in Germany, I think, Hamburg, and then he comes back. But that one was way more way sadder than all the others. Feels much more like a response to the scandal, him and the actress having that
extramarital affair.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And which is interesting that he focuses on the woman. It's not like a self, oh, my life was so difficult because the media was talking about me. He's like, no, I'm going to focus on the woman and how for a woman it's probably more difficult when you are, and we saw like even Bergman was sort of like that with Rossellini, is that it's much more how the woman came in and destroyed this happy marriage or whatever. And the man sort of is just a guy, like sort of, they sort of excuse him, oh, boys will be boys or something like that. where for some reason the woman gets fucking crucified as this demon. And I think that film does that pretty well. And then that discussion with the director at the end.
Yeah, I think it's really impressive that with such structurally similar films and with so many narrative repetitive elements, that he can make films that vary so much theme-wise, where you can clearly distinguish, like on that one it's like voyage and there's this clear sadness as you described, and this one you can clearly say it's about these uncertainties with the main character. And I mean, it's for me it's impressive because you can tell clearly what he's telling through, despite the fact that you see the films with so many similar things, which he even comments on.
Yeah, exactly. Like I remember a lot of thing that everybody says is like, oh, he makes the same film every time or whatever. People always say that about so many filmmakers. And on a surface level, like I get it, especially when you just read the log line or the synopsis. It's like, oh, here we go again, honk. but then you watch the films and there's so much. Sometimes just little changes in the way he approaches things make such a difference. I think it's, I don't know. I don't hold it against him that he has this thing that he wants to talk about and these things that he knows he's good at, and he just makes variations on it without every for me, of the ones I've watched, I never felt like he was repeating himself necessarily.
It's like novelty through repetition. It becomes more of a novelty if you repeat it, because when there's a change, you notice it more within this other film. Because you have the filmmaker, you have the bars, you have the alcohol, and 5 people talking at the table and all that. But you can clearly identify.
In The Woman Who Ran, I felt like there was less alcohol than usual.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like characters didn't need the alcohol to put things forward, because the film is much more about like the implicit thing behind what they're saying, or the passive aggressiveness, or the.
That's why I think I like this, because that was the fresh thing about it. It was just
exactly.
It was exchanges between friends, so it was easy to talk about it.
Yeah.
That it's so lovely that what you said about you two said about she's testing out what she thinks of her marriage through these other friends' lives and putting out these repeated words, this thing that she has with herself, and it becomes it erodes whatever she feels and thinks and believes about the marriage, so much so that then she has probably the courage to confront her ex. So and that all implicitly.
I think a very beautiful line. It's like in the first interaction, that woman, the first friend, when she hears about it, she says, "Oh, that's surprising," and then our protagonist in the second interaction uses that, and when she describes her situation with the 5 years, she says it's surprising in the same way. So it's really interesting because yeah, clearly she doesn't know, and she's trying to. I mean, each opinion she hears matters a lot, and so she shapes it around the people she respects, and that shapes her what she says. But ultimately, it's so well written because I mean,
And it's so detailed. Like
yeah,
even hearing you guys, like I'm noticing new things that then on when you rewatch it, because on a first impression it seems like a pretty simple film you watch one time and yeah, you got everything out of it. But there's so much detail in the performances, in the way she reacts, in
Oh
the
yeah.
things they say that gain new meaning, and you don't know if it's like, are you like what you were saying about the oh, you don't have no you don't have to support yourself. I don't, one of the characters says that. It seems like such a, in a way, a slight, like trying to see, you got it, your husband gives you the money, whatever, or you're
It's not even you don't want to support yourself, but you don't support yourself anyway. Like I do, I support myself. You
exactly, it's a
don't.
very
is
passive aggressive thing to say, but in the context of if she wants to, run away from her husband or whatever, again, it's even that more of that perspective of like, yeah, but I can support myself, maybe I can't, I don't know.
and they literally say it like about the little story that comes up through the CCTV. They're them discussing the girl that has the abusive father. They literally say, "Where's the mother? She ran."
Yeah.
So
yeah, yeah.
there's just this little, it's like falling down a well with him. The zoom, it just does that because you enter different places of intimacy, these frames of thought of socialization, just different worlds, and then you are sucked out of it. Oh my god! So back to the real world. So
She becomes that woman she hears about that ran away. She becomes her
yeah,
basically.
Yeah, to me that was what the film communicated, that even if she doesn't become that, is that's what she's thinking of, that's what
Yeah.
she wants to do. She wants to run away. That's the final shot, is seeing nature, a place where you can run to. Although it's interesting that it's like, again, it's through a screen, it's not literally nature. There's still a
yeah.
barrier between her and the place she might want to be in.
Hmm.
Okay.
Any final thoughts?
Final thoughts. I mean, I just had one more note, but it's pretty trivial.
Mhm.
But it's like I find really interesting the way he sometimes cuts out of dialogue. Well, maybe not so trivial, but the way he cuts out of dialogues, because it's like, okay, I'm done with this conversation. Let's go. Let's move. It's like, okay, I have to cement the idea, but once I've done that, I can move on. And it's another thing that jolts you sometimes. It's the way it seems to exit the conversations kind of unexpectedly.
Yeah, we were talking about the editing with the zooms, but he does. I do think he also edits pretty well in connecting the scenes.
Hmm.
Like he ends in time. Sometimes it's very strange, or when he cuts from the cat to her with like Kim Hee with her eyes open, she's looking at the off screen, the CCTV, presumably. I think he seems to end scenes at always at the perfect time, even if it's a little strange at the time he.
Yeah.
I don't think he's just like he's just putting scenes together because what he's interested in is the zooms, and the cutting is just, oh, we got to get to some other place. I do think he puts thought into how he connects the different sections, and you see that through the shots of the mountains as well.
Even the music, I find it, the way he enters with this little piece of music or really unexpected. They don't make up the whole of the structure. They just come as these ellipses or changes of action into another scene. Particularly in this film, as she walks the streets and you have this little.
Yeah. He uses that a lot actually. And right now
It's
wrong then it's
like
yeah.
yeah, it's different variations on the piano perhaps, but yeah, here it's just the abrupt cuts on those pianos are something that are so kind of, it stays in your memory like, gosh. I don't know if I particularly like it or dislike it, but it's just something that marks me.
It's almost like ambient music.
Yeah. Just
So
what was the decision behind this? I always wonder, like suddenly there she is walking and then next scene, and I always think, I could go without the piano, but it doesn't bother me as well. Like it doesn't kill it, but it's just curious. It does make you wonder what is behind the choice of this particular piece and why to cut it like that. But maybe it is part of the same mundaneness that he so much praises, and it's part of the core of his films. Like when you're hearing music. you come in and out of it. You turn it on, you turn it off. So basically, that's what he's doing in terms of formal aspect of it.
Right, well, that's all for today. If you'd like to reach out and suggest a film for the next episode, you can find us on the podcast official Instagram and Facebook pages. Thanks for listening and see you next time.